Hey, hello everyone and welcome to Extreme Graphics Tech. My name is Angelo and on today's video we're going to be having a first look at DLSS 3 versus DLSS 4, and this means we're going to be checking the CNN model against the Transformer model. Okay, because a couple of days ago Cyberpunk was updated, allowing you to start to play with these models, and I know some people have taken the DLL, have put it on other games and have started testing, but before I get into that I prefer to wait for official support just to be sure that we are doing the correct comparisons. Okay, so having said that, the first thing I would like to say is that when testing there is a performance hit when using Transformer model, at least on the 4090s, or I'm going to suppose in the 4000 series of cards back, okay, until RTX 2000 there is going to be a performance. In the case of the 4090 is around 5%, which is not that bad. I went from like 120 FPS to 113. I think that's okay if the quality, you know, is good enough. But I don't know how this is going to scale to GPUs with less tensor cores and capabilities, so we have to also check that on future videos. However, on this one I wanted just to have a first look at the technology. And the first thing I want to say is that I feel that the implementation of DLSS CNN on Cyberpunk was already extremely good. And unfortunately, because of the kind of image that Cyberpunk works with, I feel it's like a kind of soft image, not very, you know, detail in terms of, you know, like small details. You know, the image is kind of soft from my point of view on the game. This is not bad. I think it's just an artistic choice, a way to present the game. But this means it's quite difficult to really grasp the difference. In movement, there is different. There is less flickering in many areas. It sort of work okay. But honestly, it wasn't that big of a jump, at least from my point of view, in terms of image quality. Okay, because there are other improvement in terms of motion and so on that of course makes this a very interesting proposition. However, in terms of image quality, I didn't see that much of a big deal. I tested on 1080p and then on 4K. On 1080p I tested using a balance mode just to, you know, push the algorithm a little bit, and on 4K I tested a performance mode on both CNN and Transformer model. And of course I'm going to be showing also the native game, so you can make a better comparison. However, what I did notice, and I want to start saying this now, is that there are some areas where I think the Transformer model is going to be better, and that's something that I am going to be talking in the conclusions. Okay, but first I want to show you the videos so you can see what I mean. But before I say that, please remember to like, subscribe, because only your subscription will help me bring more content like this. It's very hard to create content on YouTube, so all I'm asking for you is to click that subscribe button, like and share, because it's the only way to keep our channel growing. And if you like what I do, I really ask you to just do that. It's completely free and you're going to be helping me a lot. So having said that, let's see the videos. Okay, so if we start with the 4K version of the test, I'm going to be doing, as I said, 4K and 1080p. We have native, CNN performance, and then trans performance, okay, Transformer model. So I have to say that at 4K, I didn't see so much of a difference, and there is really, I don't think Cyberpunk is the best game to show this sort of technology, because as I said, Cyberpunk is not a game with lots of detail. It has lots of details, but the image is kind of soft and always like a particular look that makes the game not as detailed like an Avatar or Horizon Forbidden West game. And I'm running this at 0.5%, so we can well, half the speed of normal, just to try to find out some better details, or, you know, try to look at something. If we go a little back here, we can go to these little details, and as you can see, yeah, it sort of looks a little bit better. If you look here, you cannot make out the text, while here seems to be a little bit more readable. And here you can see the Jefferson Post and this detail, Night City. There seems to be more details, more like they're more crisp, right? They look a little bit more crisp, and I think that's where most of the difference from the Transformer model in this game is, which initially it may not look like a big difference, but I think it is in terms of image clarity in general. Okay, we are going to have or see a much more crisp image, even if we were not resolving like night and day difference. But when you see here, you can see it's hard, it's not hard, but it's, you know, you sort of make out Night City, right? Because you sort of know what is supposed to say there because of the letter. But I think in the transformer model you can actually read exactly Night City, and it looks quite clear. You can see the word explosion here looking much better. You can see here what I was saying, you know, you can see here that it said third clash and some, you know, there is more word, while here is completely obliterated on any of the details. So that's where I am seeing that the biggest difference is in this game and on this model, at least with this first game. That's why I think with other games we're going to see a much bigger difference, because of what I see is that the transformer model, according to the DF interview, that what they are trying to do now is that CNN got to a limit. It creates a very nice image, but it's the small details that the CNN model is missing in some cases, or making them, you know, a little bit blurry, or not making them pop out the way it should. That transformer is going to change. And well, you know, in terms of general image clarity, that's going to be quite a good thing, right? So if we ever can get, you know, more image clarity, that's always good. Don't pay too much attention to the native one because of the motion blur. Then being a lower resolution means it's the motion blur is bigger and it's making this looks like that, unfortunately. So we have to compare on certain situations here. So as you can see here, if you pay attention to some of the areas in the bar, you'll see that the transformer model is much more stable. And remember, we're running performance mode, which is internally 1080p, okay? So as you can see, the transformer model is going to be much more stable in terms of details than the CNN model is, if you pay a little bit of attention there, okay? So look at that, you can see that this area here was much more stable from the beginning compared to the other one. So if we can keep looking, for example, like at the bottles, you see that they tend to shimmer, but the shimmering is less pronounced on the transformer model, which is, as I said, the little details, because that shimmer comes from like the reflection of light doing this, right? So if we go here, you can see that the this area seems more crisp and more detailed than in here, also with the letters and everything here. So yeah, I can see it's obviously better. I wouldn't say it's not. It's not a night and day change, at least in this game, but from my point of view, anything that you can get out of a model and make the image look better is always a good thing. For example, here, look at the difference that even from native, okay? It's hard to read this letter from far, okay? We get closer and it's easier to read, but we are losing some details in here. As you can see here, it's hard to read on the native one what it says, a little bit better on the CNN model, but I think from here, you can actually read it perfectly fine, every single one of the world, boys, girl, meals, hardcore, heavy, drugs, and drinks, and I'm reading from the bottom to the top, so you can see. And you can get here also more details. You cannot make out at all what it says here, you cannot. In any of these, while here it's clear that we can read meals and hardcore, girls and boys, right? I think that's obvious. Here we can read clearly vending machines. Here is not that clear, but we are inferring that that is what it said, okay? Of course, when we get closer, it's easier for all the models to be able to read that, so that's good. So here, once again, as you can see, I feel that we have a little bit more detail in this, but nothing major, nothing like game changer. It's just the way you know, this game is, that I think we are not getting the full quality. However, you can see that there is flickering on both in this case because of, you know, coming from a much lower resolution, and that's something that is not being solved in the transformer model from the CNN, at least in this particular situation. For the rest of it, I can't see any much of a big deal, except maybe here, if you pay attention to the little details in the background. What I mean is, with this air conditioning unit, you can see that the grid on top of it is much more resolved in the transformer model than it is in the CNN. And we keep looking at that while moving, you're going to see how this starts to sort of break up, while the transformer model is always looking very stable and fine, until of course we get to some point and then they all look okay, which is sort of what we can expect. So let's go and see the 1080p version so you can also make out how good it is while transforming from a lower resolution. Okay, so I think a 1080p is even more interesting than what we're seeing before, because there are a couple of things I want you to pay attention to, and that is that the image is a lot more stable, even when though they are 1080p and starting from a balanced preset, which means that for probably internally it's like 540p, something like that. You can see that any diagonal or every alias thing that tends to shimmer because of the low resolution, you're going to see that it's a lot more stable in the transformer model, and you can start seeing that by, for example, here in this little step, you can see that the transformer model is a lot more stable, and this happens with every single one of the details here. Okay, so let me go a little bit back. I don't know if it was here. Let me go and see. It's hard to check this. Okay, and you can see, for example, in this example here, that the letters and this is much more clearer in the transformer model. It's not like night and day, but it's clearly that you can make out some of the text here, like Sean McAllister, third class, something like that, and here is a lot more difficult to read what is being said in there. Okay, so that's what I'm been referring to for a while. And let's look at the bar, because the bar tends to shimmer a lot, and you're going to see how much stable the transformer version of this is. And I think this is I've been saying that the biggest difference here is exactly the fact that everything seems to look, the transformer model of the candle looks more detailed, looks more rounded than the CNN model that is a little bit more pixelated. And I think that's what transformer is doing more. For many of the difference, look at the bar, look how much more stable the bar is in terms of shimmering. But also look at this part of the bar here. Look at this. This is the grid. You can sort of make up that there is a grid here that is not just like to put your, it's not like just something to put your feet on, but it's actually like some sort of grid in there. And look, when we move this, look how much more stable this is compared to this other version. Okay, so you can see there is a lot more going on there, and it's interesting because we're testing at 1080p, and I think that's a very good test, because we're working a final resolution that will help a lot of people probably have a better resolution when they don't like to use DLSS on a 1080p because they consider it's going to be too fuzzy or too you can see here, for example, that we can easily make out the game over text here. You can make it up here, but it's not as detailed as the transformer model, which is a lot more detailed in my point of view. You can see Avin, you can see all the I love NC, which is Night City. Evidently you can make it here that it says Patriot, and here you cannot make that so much. So as you can see, we're getting a little bit more information from the transformer model. Also here, let's just stop here, for example. Okay, and look at this. If we go around here, you can see that it's a lot more difficult to make the words here than it is to make it here again. So even at 1080p, we are getting a lot more details in text and fine detail, which is, I think, the strong point of the transformer model. And that's why I think if we tested this on something like Avatar or Horizon Forbidden West or even Ratchet & Clank, we will get a lot more of a difference, because I think those games are the ones that are going to show you more details. In this case, we have the same issue of flickering in both cases, as you can see, because obviously the lack of resolution here causes that issue to happen. However, you can see in any case that more than that, there is no particular big difference, except when we get to this point. If you look at let's look at the grid. Look at this, and this is one of the more interesting difference from me, because it means that there is the AI model is working with the actual data from the game, the geometry from the game, because as you can see here, none of this is showing the grid, but here is already starting to show. As we get closer, you're going to see how the grid in front of the fan is ever so clear. Okay, while in the other two you can barely see them. Look here, you clearly can see there is already a grid forming or out, I guess because of the distance, and here you sort of start looking, but there is nothing in here. Look at how much the grid is appearing, and look, we can keep going and keep going, and look at the grid. It's completely formed and visible, has sort of disappeared here, and it's sort of kind of appearing here, but not really. So look at how much better the transformer model look in that particular scene, showing you how many of the details. And now another one I'm going to show you to finalize this video is on the palm. Okay, when we get to a certain point, I think it's maybe around here. So look here, it looks a little bit fuzzy, a little bit soft, while it's more detail. And I won't say this, many people say, oh, that's a sharp filter being applied. No, this is not sharp. Sharp will only get you, you know, the same image with just more strong edges, but we can see here actual more detail that we have not here. Look, all this is not a sharpening filter. A sharpening filter will only get these edges and make them differentiate, but it will not show you the little details, you know, that the palm tree has. So as you can see, it's quite clear that the palm tree has more details in the transformer model, and it's more similar to the native, which even the native has a little bit less detail. So as you can see, there is quite actually a difference there, and it's a big improvement. And I think when we check other games, we're going to be seeing a very big difference, and probably the biggest change ever since DLSS 2 was introduced into the DLSS ecosystem. So okay, let's go now with my conclusions. So as you saw, it's hard at the beginning to see any difference. In fact, before I even made the videos, I was doing comparisons on static images that I took, and I couldn't really see like a huge difference. There was like here and there, but there wasn't this big difference. So in motion, there is a lot more different because there is less flickery, and there is also some details that you can see, but still it wasn't that big of a deal. So what I think when you see the 1080p and 4K video is that the difference we're going to be seeing, and I think this is huge, and I think this is exactly what NVIDIA said in the interview with Digital Foundry, is that there is a point where CNN is not enough for the small details. I think that's the key here. I think the transformer model is bringing the small details that maybe have been smudged away or not as, you know, brought back by DLSS. Because as you saw in some of those tests, when we're seeing text, it's clear that text is much better in many instances, where you can start reading some areas that they were completely unreadable before, even at native resolution. So I think that's where the whole difference here will succeed, on those small details that you maybe weren't able to see before. But of course, the problem with Cyberpunk is that it's not a game that is actually, you know, like very detail in that sense. I think games like Ratchet & Clank, Horizon Forbidden West, or Avatar are games with more intrinsic details, and I think in those games, and when they implement the DLSS 4 and we are able to check them, is where we're going to see the biggest difference, because that's where I think there is so much detail and little things around. That's where they are going to pop. You know, in the example, actually, NVIDIA used Horizon Forbidden West, and we were able to see how actually there were small details in Aloy. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing here in Cyberpunk. It's those little details that are hard to grasp, okay, or that the CNN model is losing, that we are going to bring back with the transformer model. So on this very first, this is a very first look at the quality of the game. I think there is a improvement, but maybe it's not like a super change. However, any improvement that you get obviously is good. At the end of the day, you're getting better image quality for free, essentially, so that's always good. But I think when more games come out, I'm going to be testing them. I didn't want to start changing DLLs and do things because I want the official implementation, just to be sure that everything is running the way it's supposed to and we are not making assumptions on things. So when that happens, I will bring you a more detailed video testing many different games. But I think that as for a first look, I'm going to leave it here, and so you can make your own opinions. But I would like to read you, and let me in the comment below, what do you think? Have you seen something that I missed? Do you think there is much of a bigger difference that I have been able to realize, please leave that on the comments and see you in the next video.